How you doing? Julian didn't have the time to do the whole deck tech with me. We only had time to watch the games and commentate on those, so I'll just do the deck techs by myself. Let's start off with my deck that I played, Green-White Equipment Dudes. So I wanted to make a fresh new deck. I've been playing Rock Hermit Druid for a long time and White Weenie, and they just... basically I wasn't happy with the power level of them and I wanted to win a tournament again. So I took a fresh look at the format, and like right now, I know everyone's screaming about Treasure Cruise and Dig Through Time for good reasons, so my thinking was centralised around those two cards. So I kind of put myself with, like, there's three different plans in Highlander at the moment. This is not necessarily true, but it was my idea. Whether you either want to be cruising, which is Dig Through Time and Treasure Cruise, or you want to be hating, which is like hating on those two cards, or you want to be comboing and just going over both strategies. So my first instinct is to go with Cruise, because like you're better off playing the good cards rather than hating the good cards in case you play against decks that don't play the good cards. However, once you start playing Treasure Cruise and Dig Through Time, to get the graveyard volume, you really need to play all the cantrips. And once you start playing cantrips, you're losing tempo, and then you want to play cards to regain your tempo, such as sweepers. And once you start playing sweepers, you know, you become a more reactive deck, which is excellent. Like, reactive decks are excellent, but it's just not my style. So I went with the hating category of deck, just for my personal preference. I'm not saying it's better, it's just what I like. So now when I'm talking hate, I'm talking Spirit of the Labyrinth against Treasure Cruise, Dried Militant so you can't fill up your graveyard, Scavenging Ooze to remove their graveyard, Deathrite Shaman to remove their graveyard, and these creatures are all conveniently green-white, and like a bit of black for Deathrite Shaman as well. I didn't want to play combo because I like cheap counter spells and discard can pick apart your combo, and in Highlander, because you've only got one of each, you're kind of fragile, so stay away from that route. Now, so I settled on green-white for my hate bears, and then I'm thinking, how can I get an edge on all the other creature decks out there? And I kind of figured maybe I'll try manlands. That could be a good idea. Like, you don't see many manlands floating around. That could give me an edge. So I decided to build a deck with as many manlands as I could, which once again, not necessarily the best strategy, but I like trying fresh new things. And like the best two manlands are by far Mutavault and Mishra's Factory. And to get them into a deck, I figured maybe I could cut a colour and go down 2 colours and see how that goes. And in Highlander, there's so many good cards and they're all like quite similar in power level, that, you know, trimming a colour actually doesn't drop your deck that much in power level. Like, you do lose a little bit of power, but maybe the manlands make up for that, and I was out there to find out. Anyway, so back where I was, I'm green-white dudes, I want to play some manlands, and I'm going for the equipment package. So I had to focus, so I got my equipment, Clamp, Jide, Stoneforge, Tool Shaper's Gift, 5 points. You know, that's... once you play them all together, you basically maximize your points once you start dipping into the equipment package. And then you got 2 points left over, and I'm kind of just a general good card strategy, so Green Sun Zenith and Birthing Pod were the 2 cards that I felt fit best, just for green-white. So with Birthing Pod, it definitely sculpts your deck somewhat. So I start off with some mana guys, because by the time you cast Birthing Pod, you know, you've netted some mana, you don't lose any value by sacking the creatures, and I can work my way up through like a Strangleroot Geist or a Stoneforge Mystic into Blade Splicer, Eternal Witness, Reclamation Sage, which has been good by the way, Kitchen Finks, and then I actually top out at 4, so Restoration Angel, just to blink one of the 3 drops. And I wanted another 4 drop in case Resto was dead or already found it. I overlooked Phyrexian Metamorph. I find it a little bit too reactive, and you know, if your opponent's not playing Reanimator or Tinker or something, you just don't really get enough value out of it. So Thrun was just a last minute addition, and I wanted him to be green so I can Green Suns for him as well. But arguably, like a 2 or 3 drop green guy could be more powerful than Thrun. Anyway, he's solid. And just rounding out the deck, some good removal. exile removal, you just need it against bigger dudes. Like, all my guys are kind of like 3/3s. So if they drop a fatty, like another Reliquary, I've just got to get it out of there. So kind of playing the minimum amount of removal, which dropped me into a bit of double white, and for Council's Judgment and Unexpectedly Absent, which is fine. So double white kind of helped me choose my mana guys. There's always a tension of how many mana guys do you play in a Birthing Pod Skullclamp deck. So I've just gone with the white only producing ones. So Pilgrim, Birds of Paradise, Deathrite Shaman, and Noble Hierarch, but no Arbor Elf because I've got some green-white lands that aren't forests. Okay, just rounding out my sideboard. Armageddon and Ravagers of War on the board. Against control. Having those on the board kind of makes me feel like this is what my White Weenie deck should have always been, rather than having those two in the main. But anyway, Aven Mind Sensor, a solid main deck card, but I just had to find some space, and pretty weak against Zoo, just a 2/1 for 3. You know, it's not going to get there if they haven't got a shuffle effect. Batterskull, a nice addition to bring in if your opponent's not playing much removal. Like, and if you know they're not playing Repeal or Jace the Mind Sculptor to blow you out, just bouncing the token. Sometimes it can be an upgrade for Sword of Fire and Ice too, if they have got plenty of blockers to come up the board. This deck hasn't got much evasion, so. And then Canonist, a bit of hate, and just more combo hate. Garruk Teague has definitely gone up in value as far as hate bears go, considering Treasure Cruise and Dig Through Time, but you really do sacrifice a lot by having him in your deck. Like, he can't play Elspeth Knight Errant if he's in play. Green Sun Zenith's a hilarious Nombo, but he also tutors for him when you haven't got him in play, so I don't know what's going on there, and you can't, and it doesn't work with Birthing Pod. So turning off 2 of my pointed cards, you know, so I just put him in the board for matchups where he's going to just win me the game hands down. Mirror Crusader, another main deckable card, just sideboard filler, to be honest. It could totally be main deck or not at all. Mother of Runes, once again, same criteria. She's a bit higher on the power scale. I'd actually like to put her in the main deck to protect my hate bears, especially. And then I've just think Sundering Growth was my 15th card, just like a chuck in, very solid. I haven't seen anyone else play that except for me, by the way. You guys should get on Sundering Growth. Anyway, you get the idea. Let's move on to my White Weenie deck, which Dan was playing. So Dan's White Weenie deck, I suppose. Dan admitted to rushing together this list. He bought a Council's Judgment at the last moment. The card is sweet, killing Trinity Nemesis. Other changes that Dan made to my previous White Weenie list include he's got Brimaz, King of Eresklos main deck. I didn't have him myself because if he gets stolen, you pretty much lose, like with a Vedalken Shackles or a Control Magic. And he's legendary, so they can Caracas him. Not that anyone plays Caracas anymore, so I guess that's not really a point, an argument, I should say. Run through there. He's not playing the Mox Pearl because Clamp got a point recently, so it's kind of another nail in the coffin for White Weenie, but maybe it's not in the coffin at all considering Dan's playing me in the final, although it was just a 6-round event, including top 8, top 4. So Strip Mine has replaced the Mox Pearl as far as points goes. He's got Chrome Mox in this list. Dan said he didn't like it. He bought it out every time, and he just had it in as like a pseudo substitute to Mox Pearl. I have to agree on not liking Chrome Mox. If they just have the answer for your threats, and you just run out of gas too quickly in Highlander, and the tempo boost just isn't enough. Dan's sideboard looks a lot different to mine. He's got Abolish, which is nice, but occasionally you don't have the planes. Moving down the list, yeah, all the nice big fat flies for when you board out the Armageddons and Ravagers of War, and you can really just take the game over in the skies. There's not many flies in Highlander, and those flies match up quite well against Jude. Dan's got Journey to Nowhere in the sideboard. I like that. I find Journey to Nowhere to be too bad against the control strategies to be main deckable. Like, you at least want it to be instant to hit their flash guys like Venser, Shaper Savant, or Vidunia Clique, or their man lands that jump up to block you. or you want it to be able to kill a planeswalker, so just like Banishing Light, Oblivion Ring, and Council's Judgment can. Alright, that rounds it up. Pretty similar deck strategies, I guess. This matchup will really come down to the equipment, as Julie and I will repeatedly say. Enjoy!